My boyfriend's sister broke into my house, took my baby sister, and claimed I gave her permission. The police believed her, until they saw the footage. I was 23 years old when I became the legal guardian of my 6-month-old sister Emma, after our parents died in a car accident that turned my world upside down and made me responsible for a baby I'd never imagined raising. Living in Portland, Oregon, working as a veterinary technician, and barely managing my own life, I suddenly found myself navigating sleepless nights, formula preparations, and the overwhelming responsibility of keeping another human being alive and healthy. My boyfriend Derek had been incredibly supportive during the transition, helping me baby-proof my small apartment, learning how to change diapers, and adjusting his schedule to accommodate the reality that our relationship now included an infant who needed constant attention and care. His family had also been welcoming, with his parents offering assistance and his sister Rachel expressing enthusiasm about having a baby around during family gatherings. "I love babies," Rachel would say whenever she saw Emma, reaching for her with the confidence of someone who'd helped raise her younger cousins. "Let me hold her while you eat dinner." Rachel was 28, recently divorced, and dealing with her own fertility struggles after years of trying to conceive with her ex-husband. She worked as a preschool teacher and had a natural way with children that made everyone in the family assume she'd be a wonderful mother someday. Her enthusiasm about Emma seemed like a positive thing, additional support in my overwhelming new role as guardian and parent. "Rachel's so good with Emma," Derek would observe after family dinners where his sister had spent most of the evening holding the baby, feeding her, and playing with her. "It's like she has a natural instinct for what babies need." But what I initially saw as helpful enthusiasm began to feel more possessive and concerning as the months passed. Rachel would show up at my apartment unexpectedly, claiming she'd been in the neighborhood and wanted to check on the baby. She'd offer to babysit with an insistence that felt more like a demand than a generous gesture. Most troubling, she'd begun referring to Emma using possessive language that made me uncomfortable. "How's our little girl doing?" she'd ask when she called to check on Emma's health or schedule. "Is our baby sleeping through the night yet?" "She's not your baby, Rachel," I'd remind her gently, trying to maintain a friendly relationship while establishing boundaries. "She's my sister, and I'm her guardian." "Of course, I just meant that we all love her so much she feels like family," Rachel would reply quickly, though her expression suggested she felt entitled to more involvement in Emma's life than I was comfortable providing. The boundary issues escalated when Rachel began making suggestions about Emma's care that felt more like demands than helpful advice. She questioned my choices about feeding schedules, sleeping arrangements, and medical care, often implying that her experience with children made her more qualified to make decisions about my sister's well-being. "You shouldn't be giving her formula so often," she'd say when she saw me preparing a bottle. "Babies need more structure in their feeding schedules, and you're creating bad habits by feeding her whenever she cries." "She's hungry," I'd reply, though I found myself questioning my own judgment about my sister's needs. "I feed her when she seems to need food." "That's not how proper parenting works," Rachel would insist. "Babies need to learn to wait, to develop patience and self-soothing skills. You're spoiling her by responding to every little noise she makes." These conversations left me feeling inadequate and defensive about my parenting choices, but they also revealed something concerning about Rachel's attitude toward Emma. She seemed to view my sister as a project to be managed according to her ideas about proper child rearing, rather than as my family member whose care was ultimately my responsibility. "I think Rachel means well, but she's overstepping," I told Derek after a particularly tense conversation about Emma's bedtime routine. "She's acting like she has equal say in decisions about my sister's care." "She just loves Emma and wants to help," Derek replied, though I could see uncertainty in his expression. "Maybe she's being a little too enthusiastic, but her heart's in the right place." "It's not about her heart being in the right place. It's about respect for boundaries and recognition that Emma is my responsibility, not hers." "I'll talk to her about giving you more space to figure out your own parenting style," Derek promised, though I suspected he was minimizing the problem to avoid conflict within his family. The situation came to a head on a Tuesday morning in November when I returned home from a routine veterinary appointment to find my apartment door slightly ajar and Emma missing from her crib. The diaper bag was gone, along with her favorite blanket and several outfits, but there were no signs of a struggle or forced entry. My first thought was burglary, followed immediately by the terrifying realization that someone had taken my baby sister. I called 911 immediately, reporting a kidnapping and providing descriptions of Emma and the missing items. Within minutes, my apartment was filled with police officers taking statements, examining the scene, and asking detailed questions about who might have access to my home and reasons to take Emma. "Who has keys to your apartment?" Detective Sarah Kim asked as crime scene technicians photographed the nursery and checked for fingerprints. "Just me and my boyfriend Derek," I said, though even as I said it, I remembered that Derek had access to my keys and could have made copies. But Derek would never do something like this. He loves Emma. What about other family members or friends who might have been babysitting? Nobody was supposed to be here today. I was only gone for 2 hours for a doctor's appointment. Emma was napping when I left. Any recent conflicts or disputes with anyone about the baby's care? Ex-boyfriends, family members who disagreed with your guardianship, anyone who might feel entitled to access to your sister? The question made me think immediately of Rachel and her increasingly possessive behavior toward Emma, but accusing my boyfriend's sister of kidnapping seemed extreme and potentially destructive to family relationships. "My boyfriend's sister has been very involved in helping with Emma," I said carefully. "Maybe too involved, but I can't imagine she'd take her without permission." "What do you mean by too involved?" I explained Rachel's pattern of boundary violations, her possessive language about Emma, and her criticism of my parenting choices. Detective Kim listened with growing interest, taking detailed notes about Rachel's behavior and asking for her contact information. "We'll need to speak with her immediately," Detective Kim said. "If she has access to your boyfriend's keys or has been observing your routines, she'd know when you'd be away and how to enter your apartment without force." While the police were setting up interviews with potential suspects, my phone rang with a call from Rachel herself. Her voice was calm and cheerful, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Hi, Maya. I hope you don't mind, but I picked up Emma for a little outing," she said brightly. "Derek mentioned you had a doctor's appointment today, and I thought it would be nice to give you some alone time to take care of yourself." "Rachel, you took Emma without asking me," I said, trying to keep my voice controlled while signaling to Detective Kim that this was the call we'd been expecting. "I came home and she was gone. I called the police because I thought she'd been kidnapped." "Oh no, I'm so sorry for the confusion," Rachel said, though her tone didn't convey genuine surprise or remorse. "I thought Derek had told you I'd be picking her up. I have your permission to babysit anytime, remember? We discussed this last week." "We never discussed anything like that. You don't have permission to take Emma from my apartment when I'm not here. You need to bring her back immediately." "Of course. We're just at the park enjoying the sunshine. I'll have her home in an hour or so. Don't worry, she's perfectly safe with me." Detective Kim gestured for me to keep Rachel talking while other officers traced the call and prepared to intercept her location. "Rachel, I need you to come back right now," I said firmly. "The police are here, and they need to speak with you about taking Emma without permission." "The police?" For the first time, Rachel's voice showed genuine surprise. "Maya, that's completely unnecessary. I'm family. I help with Emma all the time. This is just a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion." "It's not a misunderstanding. You entered my apartment without permission and took my sister. That's kidnapping, regardless of your intentions." "I didn't kidnap anyone," Rachel said, her voice becoming defensive. "I have keys, I have permission to help with childcare, and I was doing you a favor by giving you time to yourself. If you'd answered your phone when I called, this confusion could have been avoided." But I checked my phone records later and discovered that Rachel had never called me that morning. Her claim about trying to reach me was just another lie in what was becoming a pattern of deception and boundary violations. The police located Rachel at Laurelhurst Park, where she was pushing Emma in a stroller and acting like a normal caregiver enjoying an afternoon outing with a baby. When officers approached her, she was cooperative and friendly, maintaining her story that she'd had permission to take Emma and that the whole situation was a misunderstanding caused by poor communication. "I help Maya with childcare all the time," she told the officers who escorted her back to my apartment. "I have keys, I babysit regularly, and we discussed me taking Emma out today. I don't understand why this became such a dramatic situation." "Ma'am, We'll need to verify your story with the baby's guardian and examine any evidence related to your claim of having permission," Detective Kim informed her as they returned Emma to my arms. Holding my sister again after those terrifying hours of not knowing where she was or who had taken her was overwhelming relief mixed with anger at Rachel's casual attitude about what she'd done. Emma seemed unharmed and content, but the violation of my home and my trust felt like an assault on everything I'd been working to build as her guardian. "Rachel, we never gave you keys to my apartment," I said as she sat in my living room being questioned by police. "We never discussed you taking Emma anywhere without asking me first. You entered my home without permission and took my sister. That's kidnapping." "I have keys," Rachel insisted, pulling a set of keys from her purse that looked exactly like mine. "Derek gave them to me months ago so I could help with emergencies and childcare situations." "Derek?" I turned to my boyfriend, who had arrived at my apartment after being called by police. "Did you give your sister keys to my apartment?" Derek's face went pale as he realized the implications of what Rachel was saying. Yes, I made her a copy after Emma got sick that one time and you needed emergency help. But that was supposed to be for real emergencies only, not for taking the baby whenever she wanted." "You gave her keys to my apartment without asking me?" I was incredulous that Derek had made such a decision without my knowledge or consent. "How is that okay? I thought it would be helpful to have backup support available if something happened to you or if you needed emergency childcare," Derek said defensively. "I didn't think she'd use them inappropriately. Taking a baby without permission isn't inappropriate, it's criminal," Detective Kim interjected. "Regardless of family relationships or good intentions, you can't remove a child from their guardian's home without explicit consent." Rachel's story began to fall apart under detailed questioning. She claimed to have called me for permission, but phone records showed no such call. She insisted we'd discussed the outing in advance, but couldn't provide specific details about when or where this conversation had allegedly taken place. Most damaging, she couldn't explain why she'd taken Emma's diaper bag and clothing if this was supposed to be a brief trip to the park. "It looks like a longer outing than you initially described," Detective Kim observed, examining the well-stocked diaper bag that contained enough supplies for several hours away from home. "Why would you pack so extensively for a quick trip to the park?" "I always overpack when I'm caring for babies," Rachel replied, though her confidence was beginning to waver. "It's better to have too much than too little when you're responsible for a child's needs." "Ms. Thompson, we need to ask you directly. Did you have explicit permission from Maya to take Emma from her apartment today?" "I had general permission to help with childcare," Rachel said evasively. "We've discussed my role in Emma's care many times. That's not what I asked. Did you have specific permission to take Emma from Maya's apartment today?" The silence that followed lasted for almost a minute before Rachel finally admitted, "No, I didn't have specific permission for today. But I thought it would be okay because I help with her care so often." Rachel's admission that she'd taken Emma without permission should have been the end of the matter, but she continued to insist that her actions were motivated by good intentions and that criminal charges were an overreaction to what she characterized as a family miscommunication. Her attitude remained defiant and self-righteous, as if she genuinely believed she'd done nothing wrong. "I've been helping Maya with Emma since she became her guardian," Rachel told Detective Kim during her formal interview. "I have experience with children, I care about Emma's well-being, and I was trying to give Maya a break from the constant demands of childcare." "How is that criminal behavior?" "Because you took a child from her home without her guardian's permission," Detective Kim replied patiently. "Intent doesn't matter when you're talking about unlawful removal of a minor. Whether you meant to help or harm, taking someone else's child without consent is kidnapping under Oregon law." "But she's not really Maya's child," Rachel protested. "She's her sister. Maya is barely old enough to take care of herself, let alone raise a baby. Emma needs more experienced caregivers who understand child development and proper parenting techniques." The statement revealed the depth of Rachel's delusion about her role in Emma's life and her dismissal of my legal and moral authority as Emma's guardian. She genuinely seemed to believe that her desire to care for my sister, combined with her self-perceived expertise with children, gave her rights that superseded my parental authority. "Ma'am, Maya is the legal guardian appointed by the court," Detective Kim explained. "Her age and experience level don't matter. She has full legal authority over Emma's care and custody. No one else has the right to make decisions about that child without Maya's consent. Legal authority doesn't automatically make someone a good parent, Rachel replied. Emma deserves caregivers who know what they're doing, who can provide structure and proper guidance. That's not your decision to make. While Rachel was being interviewed, police were examining my apartment for evidence of how she'd gained entry and whether her story about having keys was truthful. What they discovered was more disturbing than I'd expected. Rachel had apparently been entering my apartment regularly when I wasn't home, not just for emergency childcare but for reasons that seemed to involve monitoring and controlling Emma's environment. We found baby clothes in your washing machine that Maya doesn't recognize as belonging to Emma, Detective Kim told Rachel when they resumed her interview. Clothes that appear to be newer and more expensive than what Maya typically buys. Can you explain how those items ended up in Maya's laundry? I sometimes buy Emma outfits when I see cute things on sale, Rachel said, as if this was normal behavior for someone who wasn't the child's parent or guardian. I want her to have nice clothes, and Maya doesn't always have the budget for the kinds of things babies should wear. And you feel entitled to make purchases for a child who isn't yours? I feel responsible for Emma's well-being, Rachel corrected. If I can afford to buy her things she needs and Maya can't, why wouldn't I do that? The police also found evidence that Rachel had been rearranging Emma's nursery during her unauthorized visits, moving furniture, changing the organization of baby supplies, and even replacing items she apparently disapproved of with alternatives she considered more appropriate. Maya, did you give Rachel permission to redecorate Emma's nursery or replace baby care items? Detective Kim asked me during my follow-up interview. Absolutely not, I replied, though the discoveries were helping to explain some things that had been puzzling me. I'd been wondering why Emma's room looked different sometimes when I came home from work, or why certain items had been moved or replaced. I thought I was just forgetting where I'd put things. It appears that Rachel has been treating your apartment like her own home and treating Emma like her own child, Detective Kim observed. This wasn't a one-time incident. This was part of a pattern of boundary violations that escalated to taking the baby. The most damning evidence came from my building's security cameras, which I'd forgotten existed until police requested the footage. The cameras showed Rachel entering my building multiple times over the past 2 months, always during hours when I was at work, and staying for extended periods that suggested she was doing much more than quick welfare checks on Emma. This footage shows Rachel entering your building at least 12 times in the past 8 weeks. Detective Kim showed me the compilation of security video. She's spending hours in your apartment when you're not there, and she's bringing bags of items in and out on a regular basis. I had no idea she was coming over so often, I said, watching the footage of Rachel behaving like she lived in my building and had every right to be there. I thought she was only coming over when I specifically asked her to babysit. The frequency and duration of these visits suggest she was treating your apartment like a second home and treating Emma like her own child to care for as she saw fit. The security footage also captured the morning Rachel took Emma, showing her entering my building with a large bag and leaving with Emma in her car seat, along with the diaper bag and additional items. Her behavior on camera was calm and methodical, like someone executing a plan rather than someone making an impulsive decision to help with childcare. She doesn't look like someone who just decided to take Emma for a quick trip to the park, Detective Kim observed as we watched Rachel load baby supplies into her car. This looks premeditated, like she was planning to be away from your apartment for an extended period. How long was she planning to keep Emma? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Based on the supplies she packed and her behavior on the footage, it appears she was prepared to care for Emma for at least several days, possibly longer. The realization that Rachel might have been planning to keep Emma indefinitely was terrifying and infuriating. What I'd thought was a boundary violation and poor judgment was actually an attempted kidnapping by someone who'd convinced herself she had more right to my sister than I did. When confronted with the security footage during her second police interview, Rachel's story changed dramatically. She abandoned her claims about having permission or doing me a favor, and instead began arguing that she was protecting Emma from what she characterized as inadequate care. Maya doesn't know what she's doing, Rachel told Detective Kim with newfound defiance. She's overwhelmed, inexperienced, and not providing Emma with the structure and guidance she needs. I was trying to give Emma better care than she was getting at home. So you admit that you took Emma without Maya's permission? I took Emma because she needs proper care from someone who understands child development, Rachel said. Maya loves her, but love isn't enough. Emma deserves caregivers who know how to raise children properly. And you decided you were qualified to make that determination? I have years of experience working with children. I can see when a baby isn't getting appropriate care, and I can provide better alternatives. The interview revealed that Rachel had developed an elaborate fantasy about her role in Emma's life, seeing herself as the more qualified parent figure and viewing me as an obstacle to what she considered proper childcare. She'd been planning to gradually increase her time with Emma until she could argue for formal custody or adoption proceedings. I love Emma more than anyone else in her life, Rachel declared during her final police interview. I understand her needs, I can provide for her future, and I would never let anything bad happen to her. Maya is doing her best, but her best isn't good enough for a child who deserves the world. The delusion was complete and terrifying. Rachel genuinely believed that her feelings about Emma gave her rights that superseded my legal guardianship and my sister's best interests. Rachel was ultimately charged with kidnapping in the second degree, burglary in the first degree for repeatedly entering my apartment without permission, and stalking for her pattern of unauthorized surveillance and control of Emma's environment. The evidence from security cameras, her own admissions, and the physical evidence found in my apartment made the case against her overwhelming. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a family dispute, prosecutor Jennifer Walsh explained during Rachel's arraignment. This was a systematic campaign to gain control over a child who wasn't hers, culminating in the unlawful removal of that child from her legal guardian's home. Rachel pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for a sentence that included 2 years in prison, 5 years of probation, and a permanent restraining order preventing her from having any contact with Emma or me. She was also ordered to undergo psychological evaluation and treatment for what the court-appointed psychologist diagnosed as delusional disorder with obsessive features. The defendant appears to have developed an unhealthy fixation on the victim's child, Dr. Patricia Martinez testified during Rachel's sentencing hearing. Her behavior suggests she genuinely believed she had parental rights and responsibilities toward a child she had no legal relationship with. Derek and I broke up shortly after Rachel's sentencing, as it became clear that his family's loyalty lay with his sister despite the evidence of her criminal behavior. His parents insisted that Rachel had been trying to help, and that pressing charges was an overreaction that had destroyed their family relationships. Rachel made a mistake, but she loves Emma, Derek's mother told me during one of our final conversations. Sending her to prison seems cruel when her intentions were good. Her intentions don't matter when she committed multiple felonies, I replied. She stalked us, burglarized my apartment, and kidnapped my sister. Those are serious crimes regardless of her motivations. She was trying to help a child she cares about. That's not the same as being a criminal. But it was exactly the same as being a criminal, because caring about someone doesn't give you the right to violate their autonomy or the autonomy of their guardian. Rachel's love for Emma, however genuine, didn't justify her decision to treat my sister like property she could take whenever she felt it was appropriate. Today, 3 years later, Emma is a happy, healthy 4-year-old who has no memory of the day she was taken by someone who claimed to love her. We've moved to a different city, I've installed comprehensive security systems in our home, and I've learned to trust my instincts about people who seem overly interested in my sister's welfare. The experience taught me that some of the most dangerous people are those who genuinely believe their feelings and intentions justify violating other people's boundaries. Rachel wasn't a stereotypical kidnapper motivated by money or malice. She was someone who'd convinced herself that her love for Emma gave her rights that superseded my parental authority and Emma's need for stability and security. Some people can't distinguish between loving someone and owning them, Dr. Sarah Kim, the therapist I started seeing after Rachel's arrest, explained to me. Rachel's behavior toward Emma wasn't really about what was best for Emma, it was about what made Rachel feel important and needed. The security footage that ultimately proved Rachel's guilt also served as a reminder that the most dangerous violations of our safety often come from people we trust, people who have legitimate reasons to be in our lives, people whose harmful behavior can be disguised as care and concern. Emma is safe now, but the knowledge that someone could develop such an elaborate delusion about their right to control our lives remains sobering. Some forms of love are actually forms of possession, and some people who claim to want what's best for you are actually pursuing what's best for themselves. The cameras that captured Rachel's crimes have been replaced with more sophisticated security systems, but the real protection comes from understanding that boundaries aren't suggestions, they're requirements for healthy relationships, and people who consistently violate them aren't confused about your expectations. They're simply prioritizing their own desires over your autonomy, and that's a choice that reveals everything you need to know about their character and their intentions.